Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar where we'll be taking a look at smart metering and how it can benefit your business. My name is Stephen Kennett and I look after the energy and built environment portfolio here at 2 Degrees. I'm delighted to welcome our presenters today. We have Sunil Shah of Eclair Advisory and Peter Tabee of Ipsum Energy, who both have a wealth of experience in this area. Today's presentations will last for around 35 minutes, which will leave us with 10 minutes for questions at the end. Before we begin, I'd just like to remind everyone that you can submit questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Just type in your question and press send, and we'll wait until the end before answering as many as we can. As an aside, if you should have any technical issues during the presentation, please use the chat box on the right-hand side to send me a message, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. So without any further delays, I'd like to hand over to Sunil, who'll get us started with today's presentation. So over to you, Sunil.
Many thanks, Stephen. Hello, everybody. The presentation which I'm going to run through it comprises two elements to it. Apologies for those of you expecting Department of Energy and Climate Change to be presented. Unfortunately, they had to step out, but what I do have is their slideshow, which I'm able to run through, which gives an overview of the smart metering implementation program, where it's originated from, and what its program is into the future. What I'll do at the end then is look at a project which Eclair Advisory is working in conjunction with DEC on, which is looking at how data and information can be used to drive changes in behaviour, particularly around energy efficiency. So in terms of looking at the smart meter rollout itself, the program itself forms part of a wider program which DEC have been involved in and the government have been involved in around energy efficiency overall, and also around the use of data and around the reporting requirements as well. So the smart meter rollout is specifically focused towards domestic consumers and also towards small and medium enterprises as well. So we have a total of 53 million meters in 28 million homes. So these are for the gas and the electricity meters within those domestic dwellings, together with a further 2 million in non-domestic sites. On top of that, we have for larger businesses and larger organisations the requirement to have AMRs that are put forward, so automated meter readings that are also required. And these are known as advanced meters, which the difference between advanced meters and smart meters is relatively slight. But effectively, advanced meters have less capability to be transferred from one supplier over to the next, whereas the smart meter requirements, one of the key criteria of those is that you can have the same meter that's put in regardless of who the supplier happens to be at the end. Another key requirement of the smart metering rollout is the timescales as well that we're operating to, and specifically an end date which has been slightly extended recently from 2019 to 2020 for the installation of all of these 50 million plus meters to be installed. In terms of the benefits behind the smart meter rollout, there's a series of benefits that are coming through both to the consumer from a grid perspective and from an industry perspective overall. And all of that culminates together in a huge amount of cost savings as well that arise from that. That's direct cost savings from reduced energy consumption, together with direct cost savings from reduced time and effort that's being spent by all parties within the industry. So specifically for the consumer side, the smart meter intention is very much driving towards having better data and better information, which is being provided, and accurate billing, which is being provided by the supplier, which then enables the consumer to be able to use that information and then to be able to drive changes in how the energy itself is being consumed. So that part of that is facilitating easier switching between suppliers, so it becomes quicker. But also part of it is hoping that more individuals, more consumers will also enter into the market of changing suppliers, and therefore helps to drive a more competitive energy market. There's other elements as well which we're starting to see through as well. So there's an increasing number of innovations in smart products and smart appliances which are also coming through. So these are appliances which are able to turn on or to maximise energy during the cheaper periods of time. So we may have washing machines that may turn on at night times, specifically when energy becomes cheaper. So that's on the consumer side. On the network side as well, it enables an integration within a smart grid activity and better network management, so through the likes of National Grid and through the various providers of the energy supply. You're able to get a better operating network that comes through, and therefore also a cheaper network that gets delivered. And the overall program is an end-to-end system, which starts off with the meters, which gets installed within both the domestic and also the smaller organisations, how that data and that information gets captured, and then who ends up using that data and that information itself. And a key part of this, which has spent a fairly significant amount of time in trying to get right, has been the linkage in between the DCC, so it's the Data and Communications Company. The intention of this company is to act as the bridge between capturing information and data from the local levels, so that's individual businesses and individual householders, and being able to manage that data and manage that information for the organisations who want to use it, so the suppliers, the network operators, and various other authorised parties. So the role of the DCC is huge and is significant in terms of managing some of the privacy and some of the security issues which also exist as part of the provision of the data and the information which is available, but also in itself is also key in terms of suppliers and network operators being able to better provide cost-effective energy solutions back towards the local householders or local businesses as well. So that the question that exists for the DCC is very much, from a privacy perspective, a greater onus on privacy, not being allowed to share any of that information, would lead to less information that's available to suppliers, network operators, which therefore also may mean that the best options may not be available. So that role itself becomes critical. And so in terms of looking at the program that we have in putting together the potential savings that there are, looking at installing the 53 million meters, and also putting in the structured approach that I've just mentioned in terms of the individual dwellings and the small businesses, the DCC, and then how the information goes out. The program itself has started off back a number of years ago through the policy design, and there's still elements of the policy design which is being discussed at the minute and being finalised. But largely over the last few years, we've gone through a period of implementing smart meters within businesses, trying them out, but also putting together a lot of the foundation elements. So things like the DCC, things like the Smart Energy Code, which has been pulled together, acts as the underlying infrastructure around how the smart meter program will then operate. And then following on from that, in autumn 2015 is the expectation, is the mass rollout. And this will be where the vast majority of the smart meters will then be installed across the residential and also the small and medium business sector. And I mentioned elements such as the SEC and the DCC in here. And so somewhere the industry arrangements are being made is the underlying framework that's going to exist to ensure that the privacy, the security matters of the data, who has access to the data and what happens to that data is correctly understood and also correctly apportioned, so the consumer fully understands what's happening to their data, and also the end suppliers organisations also fully understand what their roles and what their responsibilities are as part of it. And so some of the key elements which is currently being looked at is things such as suppliers will be required to explain to customers which data is being used, for what purposes, and what choices the consumer has about this. Suppliers will also need to get explicit customer consent to access half-hour data or to use the data for marketing purposes. For network operators, they'll be allowed access to half-hour data for regulated purposes only, provided that they aggregate it, so that there's no information that comes as individuals and you're not able to define who an individual is from them. And again, that's as part of the regulated activity. And third parties, such as energy services companies or switching sites, can also get access through to the data, but they need to be obtaining consumer consent first of all via the DCC, and they need to be explaining why and how they're going to be using that data and use that information. So again, the Smart Energy Code and the intention behind that code is really to be able to set a very strong precedent of how the security of that data is going to be managed. There's also been licenses which have been set up as part of the DCC that's been set up, the Data and Communications Company. So that's now been let to a company called Capita, and Capita now hold the licenses for a number of sub-organisations who are going to manage the communication and manage the data as part of this system. So all of those elements have now been pulled together as the set of organisations and the operating requirements. Okay, so what I'll talk about now is the project which Eclair Advisory is working with the government on around understanding the use of data to drive better behaviour change. And a lot of this comes back to some of the comments which I've made beforehand of some of the consumer benefits that are going to arise from the smart meters, but also from the use of AMRs for larger organisations. And it relates back to how the data is provided and how that data gets used. So we have a cyclical process where data gets generated, and we now have access in large numbers of organisations for half-hour data and half-hour meters. That data then gets translated into a form of information around dashboards and graphs and various other forms of information to enable people to understand how the energy is being used, the profile of that energy, and where some of the potential savings are. But to understand those potential savings currently requires somebody who truly understands what those profiles actually means to be able to unpick where those potential savings are. So we're looking at a mechanism and a measure to be able to provide a form of insights, a top 5 list of where savings are available and how they can get delivered. And for those insights to move towards behaviour change within organisations and also with individuals, to be able to move from being told to do something to actively and proactively making those changes directly. So in this sense, we're moving away from an energy campaign which might take place over a week or 2 weeks and everybody turns their lights off and the computers off. What happens 2 weeks later once the campaign is finished, and it's now left to individuals to deliver these sorts of elements themselves. So it's the form of incentivisation that comes as part of that behaviour change. And then finally, to close the loop, it's how do we measure how that behaviour change has been delivered? So can we measure the changes which individuals are actually making and where successes are taking place, and how do we reward those successes? So the project itself looks at a series of key questions, which I've listed down there. And we have a series of research activities which are taking place at the moment. The first and the main one is a survey which is taking place, and I've provided a link to the survey in here, which has been hosted through SurveyMonkey as well. We've got a couple of questions as well in here, looking at the engagement of staff in this question, and there's a poll question which has now appeared. So we've got around a minute or so, a couple of minutes to provide your responses to this. And the question itself looks at how do you currently engage staff in energy consumption, the role that they play in reducing the amount of energy which is being used. So this is very much about the interrelationship between the data and the information which is being provided, and then how do you share that level of information with staff, and what do you want from staff to be able to deliver, how much do you want those guys to be engaged as part of that. Let's say you've got about 30 seconds or so to be able to provide a response and an answer to that. Okay. How are we doing on responses, Stephen?
Yeah, so the poll's closed now, so we've got the responses back from that.
Okay, fantastic. Can we have a quick look at them?
So kind of looking, so I'll quickly, it's roundabout, so staff engagement is around about 15%, 5% for only the facilities team, another 5% for online information, events and road shows is 12%, engagement of staff is 12%, and use of gaming is 0.
Okay,
interesting.
Brilliant. Okay, so there's, I mean, the largest result on that was there's no staff engagement, but also fair places around the engagement through the various campaigns and through feedback responses that do take place as well. Okay, there's a second question as well that we do have, which is around the perception regarding smart meters. So in this question, what we're looking at is what kind of benefit do you believe within the commercial environment, so this is within small, medium organisations, and in a similar way for the advanced metering for larger organisations. What kind of benefits do you think the metering options will be able to provide you? So this will be the access to accurate half-hour information, half-hour data, accurate billing and invoicing, etc. And where do you feel that the number one benefits will be as part of that? So again, it's another survey, another question, and another 30 seconds and minutes to be able to answer that. Okay, Stephen, how are we doing on that one?
Okay, I've given people a few seconds longer on this one because I think the first one, a lot of people didn't have enough time to respond. So this one's just finishing off now, and I'll run through the results we've got back. So option B, promotes, improves measurement and reporting of energy and carbon use. That was 32%. That was the top result. Okay. Creating a stimulus to invest in carbon reduction schemes, that was 18%. The the second highest, and then can help encourage consumption behaviour within the business. That was 9% of responses, and then raises the understanding of energy consumption at board level, followed by provides little benefit in additional energy consumption data than already available. And followed by G, a missed opportunity.
Okay. So broadly very positive in terms of the responses, and so 50% scoring on A and B in terms of stimulus and the ability to be able to get better data and better information on energy and how energy is consumed within buildings, which is, again, it's a very positive note that then enables a better understanding and therefore better decision making on where energy efficiency measures can take place, which is one of the key areas and key requirements that the government has had over the installation of the smart meters and the advanced meter regime. So as I say, the smart meter project itself is a project we're engaging with DEC as part of it. The project runs through from September through to December, so we're halfway through that. I mentioned the research which has taken place. So we have a survey which is running at the moment. There's a total of about 15 or so questions, which should take around 10 to 15 minutes to answer. We've also got a series of one-to-one interviews which are taking place, and also 3 structured workshops which are going to be performed towards the end of October and into November. We anticipate pulling all of this together, and the information will be there to look at how do we better utilise the data and the information which is coming through to drive behaviour change and to drive energy efficiency from that data. We're going to share that information with DEC as well as part of the smart meter rollouts and the advanced meter program which they have, with a report published and launched in spring 2014. If anyone wishes to be involved in the project through the interviews or through the structured workshops, happy to have a discussion with you. I've got my email address which is listed out there as well, so please feel free to send me an email. Many thanks, and over to you, Stephen.
Great, thanks, Neil. So I'll now hand over to Peter, who's going to take us through the next presentation. So over to you, Peter.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Peter. I'm the founder of Ipsum Energy, and we are a Dutch-based company, so you have to forgive my Dinglish, but okay, that all aside. What we do is we actually drive behavior change by measuring in detail all the effects of switching on and off appliances. We do that based on a very simple but very intense algorithm. If you bear in mind that around 70% of the energy consumed is related to human behavior, helping people save energy, that makes a good sense to start there. Key ingredients for behavior change as we see it are continuous insight in what's going on, fully disaggregated insight, that is, you need to be able to see all the different appliances or clusters of appliances in terms of when they consume energy, what they consume, how much, those kind of things. Direct feedback of actions taken so far. So if you turn off something, you need to be able to see what that actually means. How much did you then save? And what we also do is we make plans with customers, and we provide them with continuous tracking on those plans. So that in a nutshell is it. I have a deck prepared, so let's go quickly through it. Basically, this is the agenda for that deck. We are Ipsum. I will briefly explain what it is that we do. It's all about the data, and in the end I finish off with one question. A question about how you can help us. What you see on the slide is you see Ipsy. Ipsy is our avatar. It is also our app. And once you have downloaded the app, which you can get access to if you have our solution installed, Ipsy is your guide in helping you, giving tips and tricks, in helping you understand what to do, and telling you if you've done it right or not. Now, basically it works like this. We have some core service propositions. We focus on B2B, office and shops and schools as well in the meantime. And the idea is that you only save structurally if you really manage to continuously influence the behavior to get to a certain stage of behavior, which then is focused on no longer wasting energy anymore. Now, the key technology behind it is that we have an algorithm which finds all the fingerprints, and you have to bear with me, it's a little bit technical, but it finds all the fingerprints of all the electrical appliances that consume electricity at one moment in time in a building or in an office or in a shop. Basically, if you know that all the electrical appliances individually have a marker in the electrical circuit, which we call a fingerprint, as soon as you are capable of identifying that fingerprint, you can find the appliances. And once that is done, you can totally start to understand how they are being used. Basically what we said, and in the Netherlands this now gets some traction, smart meters will give you insight on the total load, on the total energy consumption. If you analyze that and if you have that continuously with you, you will be able to save between 2 and 3%. If you, however, know what's going on in details, so if you understand that your lighting is burning after office hours because you can see it's your lighting, or that your air conditioning is still on in the weekend, then you become aware. And that awareness leads to a structural saving anywhere between 6 and 10%. Now, the key trick is that awareness, you can see it as having a good idea to quit smoking. Yeah, you will start January 1st, and somewhere in January you're still busy with it, somewhere in February you're busy with it, but in March your priorities have changed and you fall back to a situation that was arguably worse or similar to January 1st. This is why we set out to do the behavior change, which is then based on a clear action plan and a lot of feedback on how you are doing that action plan. Are you on track? Are you being efficient? That we do via the app. And that we have now found leads to savings averaging between 15 and 20%. This is how it works. What we will do is we will install a small little device. Due to the frequency of measurement, it cannot be the smart meter yet. We will install a small little device in your meter cabinet that measures all the consumption data, sends it out after packaging it as a data package, sends it out to our backend where our algorithm resides. It will find all the fingerprints, and we will send it back as enriched information telling you what to do. This is continuous. It's a 24/7 circuit. It's closed. So the whole idea is that we influence behavior change without influencing the structure or infringing on current business operations. As this deck is going to be shared afterwards, I will not go into the details of this. You can read it later on, but this is our timeline. We have the ability to measure 2 months of data. That will transfer into creating a baseline for the whole year. And from that baseline, we define the actions that, well, if you want to save this amount of energy, we recommend you take those actions. And that we start to track. And on that set of actions, we give you continuous feedback. So you always know where you are, what you are doing, what you should have done, where the opportunities are, if you are doing well, those kind of things. And what we find in the Netherlands really useful, we will be able to benchmark, although anonymously, with peers to see how they are doing. And so far we have customers that really find that very interesting. Now, as I mentioned, it is all about the feedback. So part of the system is the feedback loop, which you see explained here in detail. I invite you to read through it. The basic idea is that we use nudging and guidance to direct people in the office to the right behavior. We use energy champions, and that is, if you have 100 people, we need around 6 energy champions, and all they need to do is execute the actions, which is hardly nothing, but they see the result of those actions, and what we now find in the Netherlands is that they start to talk about it with their colleagues. And then, because they have the app, they can show what's going on, then it trickles down, and that is the idea. Then, by changing the behavior of a few, you will influence the behavior of many. That is our philosophy. Now, this slide is fancy and busy, but it is actually what we do. We install this measurement device. We get the information continuous. We have targeted actions that the customer needs to execute. We track the progress, translate that into results. We visualize the results, and we coach and nudge the person if he's not on track. Basically, it's like this. Second to last slide. The key ingredients: continuous insight, feedback loop, based on detailed insights. So you need to have very granular insights into your consumption. A lot of triggers, motivators, and enablers. In the formula, it's also a lot of nudges. We would want to sit with the end customer to help him decide what incentives he should give to his people, or she gives to his people, her people in that case. And yeah, we do benchmarking, also from a perspective of peer pressure. And yeah, the key ingredient on the floor is the energy champion. They are functioning as change agents. Now, the one question that I do have, although we are using this now in the Netherlands, we are rolling it out, we still struggle with finding the right profile of an energy champion. It can be anybody in an organization, or should it be somebody with specific knowledge? The question then becomes, what are the capabilities? What is the organizational position? Maybe it's a mix of people. And how many people would you consider that are needed to drive behavior change in the organization? And with that, I'm done. This is our avatar in various communication styles. If you're doing well, if you're thinking about it, if you're really happy with the results, or if you haven't taken the opportunity, this is what you will see. And that's it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for that, Peter. So we will now go into the Q&A session, and we've got quite a lot of questions come in. So we'll get through as many as we can in sort of the next 10 to 15 minutes. So maybe just following on, Peter, from your presentation. So one question we've had come in is champions are crucial, especially at the beginning, but we now feel that it needs to go further and become usual behaviour. So many original champions of ours are now in more senior positions and just expect it in their teams. I mean, do you agree with that? And have you got any sort of observations on that?
Yeah, I understand that. That is a very critical question. What we see is that the role of the energy champion just stays somewhere in that organization. Even if people evolve further, okay, then you have an evangelist in the organization, but you still need, and I think so far we think it's around 2 years. You need 2 years of active energy champions on the floor, but they need to be given airtime by their management to speak about their results. And that can be on a Monday morning, that can be on a Thursday afternoon, but they need to be given airtime when they achieve results. And as such, it's therefore not a one-off. It should be a structural thing.
Great. Thanks, Peter. So, Neil, one here for you, and I know you sort of touched on this at the beginning, but someone's just asking, what are the financial benefits of installing smart meters from the perspective of energy bills? Is it more than simply getting accurate billing and understanding the use of the energy?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, at its very lowest level, smart meters and advanced meters that are installed into a building saves absolutely no energy whatsoever. In fact, they increase the energy because they will consume energy as part of that activity. So just putting in a meter into a building and not doing anything with the information won't save any energy whatsoever or any costs at all either. So it's purely how you use the data that's generated and that's provided by the meter, and then what happens to the decision making that occurs afterwards becomes critical to enable some of those savings to come through.
Brilliant, thank you. Next question. Every meter needs a meter operator and therefore a meter operator contract. This is usually included in the bill either via a standing charge or the unit price. It is one of the 10 to 14 different fees charges incorporated in the unit price or standing charge. Sunil, can you shed any light on understanding how these fees are impacted by the installation of a smart meter?
The charging elements of how this gets delivered are complex. I think it's probably the best way of putting it. The costs associated with the installation of the smart meters originally, and certainly from autumn 2015 through to 2020 when you have the mass rollout, all of that comes through from the general public. So that there is a pot of money that's apportioned onto all of the energy bills. That money then goes into the placement of those smart meters that come through. In terms of, there was some analysis which was done by some of the energy companies themselves. They have turned around and said the provision of meters providing data on a monthly basis back to the consumer is about the equivalent in cost terms to having somebody that comes out on an annual basis to take meter readings and the rest of the time it being checked or being estimated meter readings. So I wouldn't necessarily anticipate that the overall cost elements of those 14 cost elements will be reduced significantly. How each individual energy company deals with them, though, will be up to each of those energy companies.
Great, thank you, Sunil. Another observation here, but Peter, it'd be good to get your views on this. So someone's saying, we found that by knowing what consumes most of the energy and focusing on that area first, combined with education, help deliver a good start rather than overcomplicating and trying to solve everything at once. Do you sort of have any views around that?
Oh, I would fully agree with that. The idea is, we do the same. The idea is that you create a baseline and find out what is your low-hanging fruit. And on your low-hanging fruit, you start to educate the people. And over time, maybe the low-hanging fruit is taken off the table and you move on to the next. In essence, it's always a question where the organization wants to go. How far do they want to continue? That is up to them. What we find is even turning off lighting in the end of the evening, even focusing on air conditioning or computers, printers even, those things stay on because people are not so much aware. Now, our solution is to create awareness and to help drive that excess consumption to a bare minimum. So I would indeed support focusing on the low-hanging fruit, totally.
Well, there was a piece of research which Eclair did earlier in the year with property, facilities and energy managers. And what the output of that research is that we have a paradox between what people find as being exciting and what delivers the greatest cost savings and value. So if you imagine a triangle, at the top of the triangle you have elements around certification and around offsetting, which are big flag wave and badge exercises, but there's very little in terms of actually saving energy. Beneath that you have a set of technologies that can be installed, whether they're larger major technologies or whether they're the smaller capital investment items that are included. Beneath that as a larger box is the process, the systems, and importantly is the coordination of how the existing building links and works together. So this is about making sure that your heating and your cooling systems work together and in tandem rather than competing with each other and needing to be on at different points within a building. And then your lowest level is around behaviour change, and it's about getting the right values and the right understanding within a business so that it drives everything else that takes place. What we have is a greater focus on the badges and the technology, which delivers the lower levels of savings, versus the behaviour change and the coordination of processes, which delivers the far higher, the far higher level of benefits which come through.
Great, interesting stuff. Next question: what value-added services do we expect to come about from smart meter implementation?
I think there'll be quite a few. So just looking across the range, you've got already a huge range of products which are now coming in. So I mentioned the smart appliances, and there's been a lot of talk about a range of appliances going into both residential and also offices, which understands when energy is being used and then uses that energy at the cheapest point in time. So equipment, fridges, freezers, etc., cool particularly at night time, so on and so forth. So you've got a better usage from a cost perspective, and when the grid is cheaper to be able to provide it. Certainly in terms of information advice, so how that data gets used and how the information then gets translated for customers will also be a huge value-added area as well. So there'll be a numerous set of services that will come through as part of that, probably more community-based and small business-based activities, but these are about using the data and using the information to be able to drive some of those changes that come through. But also the intention from the government is once you have an understanding of how much energy you're using, when you're using it, what the ability to change, that's going to push individuals and businesses to switch their service. And so you're going to get far greater shift in people moving from service provider to service provider, which the intention is also going to be growing the level of community energy systems, as well as encouraging more organisations to enter into the whole energy supply market as well. So you could see some major changes also occurring in that area.
Thanks, Neil. Sort of following on from that, somebody here is saying that they're particularly interested in smart meters in the residential context. And maybe what is the potential for using smart meters as part of an incentive scheme designed to reward energy-saving behaviour?
For residential itself, there's a very high. I think the intention here is all residential properties will have a smart meter by 2020. So that's the 53 million on the gas and the electricity. In itself, they don't produce any benefit whatsoever. So therefore, the intention is that they do need to have that incentivization element built into it. How that incentivization element is going to be provided is up to the installers of those meters, as well as what's available on the market at the moment. And there's been some, probably the most well-known type of meter for residential providers is from O-Power. And O-Power have made a recent partnership with one of the big 6 energy companies. And what O-Power does is it provides you with tips and guidance of where energy can be saved. But also within your local community, it hooks up with who your neighbours are and who other people are, and enables you to compare your energy consumption with your peer group. And so again, provides you that incentivization in terms of where savings are being made, why your neighbours on your semi-detached house are able to make far more savings than you are, and to provide those insights and those thoughts to use less energy.
Thanks, Neil. Peter, question here for you. Someone's asking, have you got any plans to extend the benchmarking project which you've been carrying out in the Netherlands beyond the Netherlands and sort of further afield?
Yeah, we are definitely coming across the pond, so to the UK, as Sunil pretty much knows, we are actually already working together on this. And so we expect to be UK-based, let's say somewhere in January. And so right now we are looking into what routes and roads to take into the UK market. And yeah, of course, it is a game of installed base. Our service is next to nothing in terms of cost. So that will enable us to do it. And yeah, we are looking for partners to roll this out.
Thanks, Peter. Sounds exciting. Sunil, I'm not sure if you mentioned this at the beginning, but someone is asking who are the certified data collectors and data aggregators? So presumably in the UK.
So if I understand, it's the organisations which have been approved as part of the data communications company. So there's 4 organisations in total as part of that. That was the box that sits in between the consumers and also the grid operators, the service providers. So that the Capita has got the main contracts that exist for that, and then underneath them there's a data service provider, and then there's also a comms service provider, one for the north and one for central and the south. And the terms of that and the requirements of them is probably best to there's been a fair amount of communication which is being provided through Department of Energy and Climate Change on who those organisations are, what their roles are, and how they interact with each other.
Brilliant, thank you. And one final question here, and again it's an observation, but Peter, maybe you could share some thoughts around it also. Someone's saying in an organisation, I think it's easier to engage than in general public, as people in companies can be measured, or those in the public need to understand what's in it for them. Do you agree with that, and any thoughts around that?
Yeah, to a large extent, there is also more energy to be saved in the commercial sector than at home. That is unfortunate, but that is a fact. And that is also why we chose to go first to B2B, and after that to B2C. So yeah, in my understanding, focusing on people in organizations, it's also easier to have more peer pressures and more benchmarking and more teaming up to do something than on the individual.
I think from there's different sets of how you provide your communication between an organisation and for households.
Sure.
So from an organisational perspective, if you change your set points in a building and increase the temperature which you cool at and which you heat at, the response, you can do that very simply because you have a central system that enables that to take place. You can disable thermostats that exist or certainly disable their ability to influence and change the temperatures. The result of that, though, is commonly complaints and issues that are made by staff because the staff themselves don't necessarily change their behaviour. So you don't get people who bring in the appropriate clothing to be worn during winter months and summer months. And so you have more complaints being made to a help desk system to the office manager about being too hot, too cold. And so you've got a displacement activity that takes place as part of those changes. So there's still a cost, there's still a loss of effort that's being taken up in terms of managing the energy. It's just being displaced in terms of where that happens. And that's largely where that behaviour change, that culture that I mentioned before about in the triangle comes from. So it's the engagement of staff to explain why it's happening and get them on board as part of the process. From a residential perspective, there's been a huge amount of research on how, from the residential market, how they respond to energy efficiency and energy programs as part of the Green Deal. And what came out of that is the communication of saving energy was not really picked up at all. There wasn't much of an appetite around that. What got the greatest level of response is when you started talking about comfort. and about being able to improve the level of comfort. Having a warmer building, a warmer house, got people interested. And so it's a different way of how you communicate into, as the question asks, what's in it for me? It isn't necessarily about the direct tangible bits of saving energy, saving money, because that's whilst important, is an underlying factor. What's of primary importance to them is having a space which is more comfortable for them, and where they can enjoy themselves more. So that communication is broadly the same between the two parties, but how it's then provided does differ.
Brilliant. Thanks, Neil. So before we wrap up, I just want to make listeners aware that earlier this week the Technology Strategy Board launched a new competition called the Future Energy Management for Buildings. And this might be particularly relevant for businesses that are using data from smart meters. So anyone who wants to find out more about that competition, there's a blog post on the 2 Degrees platform. So that's all we've got time for today, but I'd like to thank Sunil and Peter for their time and for getting through so many questions, and also for everyone who joined us for this webinar. Just to remind you, a recording of the webinar and the presentation slides will be archived on the 2 Degrees platform, and we'll send out an email tomorrow with the links to these, and I'll also include the link to the blog post I mentioned in that email. So I hope you found today useful and interesting, and you'll be able to join us in the coming weeks for further webinars. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.